We're back out here once again, and today we're talking about some simple tips and tricks bank anglers can use to get more bites no matter how cold that weather gets. Stick around, we're going to talk all about it.
There we go, that's one. That's a good one. Ooh, that feels pretty good.
And here is this video's featured comment. Congratulations! If you would like to have a chance to have your comment featured in an upcoming video, all you've got to do is leave a comment. And now, on with the video. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing. And if you're new to the channel, you may not know that old Lowbrow cut his teeth bass fishing from the bank. It's how I did it when I was growing up. It's what my uncle and my dad taught me. Whenever I was a kid, when I went fishing, I spent hours fishing from the bank. As a matter of fact, we never owned a boat or even rented a boat whenever I was a kid. Any fishing that we did was from the bank. So whenever I purchased a boat for fishing, I'm the first one in my family on either side that I'm aware of to have a fishing boat. So what that means is I spent many years doing it, so I know how to catch fish from the bank, even in the wintertime when it's icy cold, because there are certain things that I learned to look for, and it almost became muscle memory. It became very natural. See, if you're a bank fisherman, especially in the winter, you have some distinct advantages. And I know you're saying, but Lowbrow, the fall feed is over. Those bass have gone back out deep. And while that's true to a degree, it may not be true in the way that you think it is, but there are still some ways that we can access those bass. First and foremost, if you're on a natural impoundment, well, look for those steeper banks. Look for those areas where that water drops off. A perfect place to start is the boat ramp, especially if you've got a concrete ramp. Even asphalt will work. Now, it helps if that ramp is facing the angle of the sun. If your ramp faces like this and the sun is that way, right? That boat ramp is going to warm up, it's going to radiate heat, and it's going to have so many fish around it, especially if you've got rock all around that boat ramp that's there to protect against the prop wash. It's a great place. It's made for bank angling in the wintertime. It is a hot spot, and anybody who fishes a boat ramp in the winter can tell you it's a great place to catch some nice fish, and it's certainly a great place to start. Now, if you're on a man-made impoundment, like where I fish with the big lake, well, then our lakes are always going to go on drawdown during the wintertime. That means that they're going to open up that spillway and let that lake level drain down. They do it for various reasons. On the big lake, they do it so that vegetation doesn't go out of control. It drains the lake down, and all that hydrilla and milfoil just kind of dries out in those lower flat areas. But what that does is it provides a whole bunch of access to the lake that bank anglers didn't have before, because you can literally walk the entire distance of that lake all the way around. Every place can fish from the bank. So that means that if you're looking for those deeper holes, you have access to them now. And a lot of times bass aren't looking to go way back out into the middle of the lake. They're staying as close as they can to that area. So if there is a steep bank, like what we talked about before, if there's a steep bank where those bass can park, that's where they're going to do it. So if they're 25, 30 yards from shore, or even closer, depending on how steep that bank is, well, they're going to be relatively easy to catch. And places that you might not even think provide those sorts of situations. Something like a break wall. You come into a marina and you see those break walls everywhere, not just the boat ramp. Those hard lines provide a place for the bass to go up and down, and they use them. So think about that. Where that water level is, you've got that break wall, and it goes down to however many feet in the water. That's the same thing as a bluff bank. It may not be as big, but it provides those bass much of the same type of things that they're looking for. Those are great places to look. And it doesn't matter how cold it is, that's where those bass are going to be set up. Use the sun as your direction and use places that have quick changes in water depth, especially areas that have hard defined edges. And I'm telling you, you are going to find bass, and you're going to find them a lot more quickly than you think you will. So we know where those bass are going to be located. We know how they're going to be set up and relating to the structure in the area. What techniques, what presentations do we want to use to target those bass? Well, first and foremost, I'm going to rule out topwater. Yeah, you can catch maybe 1 or 2 topwater fish all winter long, but we want reliable presentations that will consistently give us a good chance to get more bites. So I'm ruling out topwater, and I'm going to focus on the middle of the water column, and I'm going to focus on the bottom. If I see a sunny day, well, I know those bass are probably going to be deeper in the water column, especially if it's gotten really cold. If we have a cold front that comes through that radically drops that water temperature, a lot of times that will cause those bass to go a lot lower in the water. They probably won't drift way out in the middle of the lake because, like we said, they don't want to waste the energy. But they're going to be in those same areas on those steeper banks. They're going to be right on those bottoms, right where that bank levels out into a bowl. That's going to be a great place to target. And if you've got some bare bottom bank, if you've got some bare bottom rocks, sand, whatever, a Ned rig. A Ned rig is going to be a great bait to use. And it really doesn't have to be shallow water. You can go 30 feet with a Ned rig. You know, you can have a little 1/8 ounce like this, a 1/4 ounce, a 3/8 ounce, and go bigger up. Just keep that bait small. Work it very slowly. Me, if I have a chance to work a mushroom head like this, I will let it sit on the bottom like that. And that tail will kind of wiggle in the water, and I can accentuate that by just barely stitching the rod, you know, where you take that line and you just kind of work it just a little bit to make that bait lightly vibrate. Everything about the winter is delicate. You want to have a very delicate approach to it. And you'll get those bass's reaction. Believe me, you have to be very slow. Work it along the bottom just as slow as you can. Maybe a couple little hops here and there. Drag it a little bit, and light hops. Always go less than you think you need to. And after you move that bait, let it sit for a second. Watch your line. You'll see that line start to feed back into the water. That means that your bait is going back down to the bottom. You want it to stay on that bottom. So let that line feed until it stops. Then do your next little bit. Let that line feed back down, and then do your next little bit. Now, in my area, I can't use a Ned rig too often, especially from the bank, because of vegetation everywhere. So what I do is I'll take something like this little Rattle Ned, and I put it on a small 1/0 worm hook. I'll Texas rig it with a 1/16 or 1/8 ounce bullet weight that I've got pegged down with a weight stop or a bobber stop. I use that as a type of Ned rig, and it works very well in my waters. I can use that to catch a lot of fish, especially when those fish are feeling very finicky. A Texas rig, a normal Texas rig stick bait. This is going to be your next best friend, especially whenever you're dragging a bait along the bottom. I'll use a 1/4 ounce weight. I'll use an 1/8 ounce weight, and I will work this very slowly. A lot of times you're going to have those gin clear waters because of how cold it is, and that water clears right up. You can see right through it just like glass. So natural colors like green pumpkin, watermelon red flake, they're going to do you good. Even on cloudier days, they will work a lot better than you think they will. Well, let's say we've got some cloudier days and we've got some wind. Well, those bass will come up off of the bottom a little bit, and they'll start to suspend. They'll start to disperse a little bit out. They're still going to be in those big schools, but that school will loosen up just a little bit. And for that, you've got to go to soft jerkbait. Something like this caffeine shad, a fluke, those cream soft plastic jerkbaits worked very slowly through the middle of that water column. I'll cast this out. I let it sink down, give it a couple of pops, and then let it sink down. I want to keep this a few feet down in that water. I don't want to be all the way in the bottom, and I don't want to be necessarily near the surface. So something like this worked very slowly, much like you would a regular hard jerk bait. Twitch, twitch, and then let it pause. Twitch, and then let it pause. And the neat thing about this is from the bank with really clear water, you can see this coming back to you, so you can pay attention to your retrieve. And the cool thing is even though it's underwater, you could actually see bass come up and inhale this, and you'll see that bright white disappear, and you know you've got a fish. So it's a great technique to use. Obviously, like I said, something like a Senko, something like a stick bait on a wacky rig, on a Waco rig, if you've got a lot of vegetation. You can work this around rocks, you can work it around chunk concrete, or if you have some dock pilings that are going down into some deeper water. Obviously, if you're working the boat ramp, you're going to have a pier, you're going to have a dock in that area. A wacky rig or a Waco rig in those areas is going to be very deadly, especially in cold water. You've got a little bit of cloud cover, you've got some wind. If you can skip a bait, trust me, being able to skip a bait gives you a tool that will just allow you to catch so many more fish. I've done videos on skipping. Check them out. Let's skip that bait up under that dock or near flooded brush or near the chunk rock or what have you, and let it fall down. Don't let it go to the bottom. Give it a pop, give it a twitch, and let it fall back down. Again, everything about fishing in the winter is about going extra slow. But that doesn't mean that moving baits are out of the question. A lot of times moving baits can be a great option, such as, well, a little swim bait. You've heard me talk about this. I've used these for years from the bank. And you can see in a lot of these videos when I'm fishing in the wintertime with good old swim bait on that jig, what you guys call the lowbrow rig. When you see this, you see me fishing on these large, sandy, I guess you would call them, well, it's just where the bank is. It's just where the water has receded. It's almost like a sandbar or a clay bar. But in the wintertime, that's where I'm fishing off of. The shore is actually way behind me. You'll see that in a lot of the videos. And I'm using these to catch a ton of fish in different areas, off points, near the boat ramp. And I'm going very slow with it, maybe giving it a quick crank or two. But for the most part, I'm just kind of slow rolling these. Gives me a little bit faster option, gives me something to work with that is kind of a differentiation from just the slow twitch pause or slow drag. That swim bait on that little jig head catches me so many fish. It has for so many years now. If you haven't tried that technique, I'm telling you, it doesn't matter if you've got any grass. It doesn't matter if you have any vegetation. That jig head will slide right through it. And lastly, I've got a presentation that, well, it's very different. It's going to be something you may not have thought about before. If you like to throw a spinnerbait, well, actually, believe it or not, try a chatterbait. Try a bladed jig in the wintertime. I go with a smaller one. This is a 1/4 ounce. I'll also use a 3/8 ounce. You don't have to get fancy with it. This is just the regular chatterbait. This is not the fancy one. Thunder Cricket works amazingly well. Even that Berkeley Slobber Knocker. I love those things. But you see the trailer. This is a cream soft plastic jerkbait. This is a great trailer. This is an awesome trailer. This is the best trailer that I know of for these bladed jigs. I catch so many fish in the wintertime. I'll catch more fish in the winter with a chatterbait than I ever will in the spring or the summertime. There's something about it. They come right through that slop way better than you ever believe, because when that blade is thumping like that, it acts as, I guess, sort of a windshield wiper as it clears all that vegetation out of the way. And it protects that hook a lot better than a weed guard. So this actually comes through the vegetation very, very well. Now, I'm not bringing it through timber, but I will bring it around timber, close to timber, because it'll still get hung up. And, well, I've hook set many, many a sunken tree. So you have to be careful with that. Vegetation slips right through, but don't get cocky around flooded timber. It works great around flooded timber, just as good as the spinnerbait does. And it's a great, different type of bait. It's a great alternate presentation that those bass are not going to see in the wintertime. I've caught so many fish doing that. I've caught a lot of fish using a chatterbait during that time. And, you know, you're thinking, well, lowbrow, it's clear water. Yeah, it's clear water. And sometimes there's not even hardly any wind. And sometimes it's a sunny day and I'm still catching fish on it. So give it a try. You may actually be surprised with that. So there you have it. Some great places to look for those cold winter bass and some presentations that are sure to get you tons of great bites. Catching bass in the winter is actually a lot easier than you ever thought possible. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.